might sound kind of funky, and Brandon's laptop will not let him open his camera, and so you're not going to see him, and you're not going to hear me very well. So,
At
uh,
StreamYard, figure your website out, please. Or
yeah,
Windows, do something.
not exactly sure what's going on, but it was not in the cards for us to have a smooth process today. So we'll work through it, and we'll get you some content here as best as we can. But other than your camera not working, Brandon, how is everything going?
Well, I've had a lot more free time on my hands this week. We finished our competition season with Hewitt Trustful. And so, yeah, I've had a lot more time to do schoolwork, a lot more time to go to the gym. Took a power nap before this episode, so I'm ready to go.
Very nice, very nice. Yep, I just started school back, so getting back into the grind of things. So my schedule has not opened up any, but that is okay. We'll just jump right in then, recap week 6 a little bit, give you some scores, what happened last week. Eastern Kentucky traveled to the Stripes and got a instant classic over UCA, 38-35. Talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. North Alabama finally found their way into the win column. Knocked off Robert Morris 42-31 for their first victory of the season. And then Kennesaw kind of flexed their muscles and beat North Carolina A&T 14-0. So we'll go ahead and start, recapping a little bit. Actually, before I recap, I want to show you something, Brandon. I don't know if you've seen this or not. So, it's game week, Jacksonville State, Sam Houston. Big
Oh,
game.
no.
So they Jacksonville State Twitter account made a
Oh, I saw that. I saw that.
made a graphic, and let's just take a minute to appreciate the fact that
Let's
whatever
not.
student assistant made this, or grad assistant, whatever, thought that Sam Houston was a city in Texas, and they're in the bottom right corner, but that the location was in Sam Houston. So obviously somebody said, hey, Sam Houston is not a city. It's in Huntsville, Texas. And the guy was like, oh, let me go correct it. And so he came out with his version 2.0, which said that the game was in Houston, Texas, which is
And
also not what.
conveniently was covering something up.
Yeah. But not the. So we pointed out a couple issues here, or somebody on Twitter did, and they took care of one of them and just made a second issue in that one. And I don't know if I ever even saw a correct version 3.0 or not, but that
They finally got it correct.
that guy wins bonehead of the week because
Literally, like, you didn't even
I don't.
care to contact some people that knew where Sam Houston was?
Yeah, I have no idea what that guy was thinking. Making a graphic before he looked up where the game actually was. But oh well. I'm sure that guy has beat himself up over it. But
Probably.
anyway,
I mean, they left for Houston Houston. They were traveling to the Houston airport, but they made it to Sam Houston last night.
cool. They got to Huntsville. So they flew to Houston, or they flew to Huntsville last night
Yeah,
already.
I think so. That's what the Twitter post said.
It's Wednesday.
That's what the Twitter post said.
That's it. That's a really long or
Unless they
really
were
long
like,
time to spend there.
unless they were driving, which
That's
I highly
wild.
doubt they were driving.
Yeah, I doubt they were driving too, but that is it's a long trip. Or I mean, I know it's a long trip, but that's a long time to stay in Huntsville unless they're planning on practicing there for whatever reason. But anyway, whatever. That's beside the point. We'll hop right in, break down some what went on during week 6. Like I said, North Alabama got their first win of the year. And, this is a game we said if they were going to get their first win of the year, this is going to be when it was. They outplayed Robert Morris in literally every aspect of the game. And, kind of I don't know. I mean, they played well. I was proud of the Lions. They had 200 rushing yards, 260 through the air, almost 500 total yards. I mean, they were the better team on the field, and they showed it. Scored 28 points in the second quarter. Robert Morris started to kind of work their way back in the second half, but North Alabama was able to kind of squelch that comeback. Did you get to watch any of that one?
Finally. No, I
Yeah.
I was doing band all day. I watched the Bands of America regional here in Jacksonville, and then I had to go to Hewitt for our rehearsal, and then we had our competition that night. So I did not get to watch much football on Saturday at all.
It was a good day of football, and I'm sure once Robert Morris started to kind of creep back in. I mean, at one point North Alabama was up 35-10, which we'll talk about being up 35-10 here in a minute and how that doesn't mean anything. But North Alabama, I'm sure, got some of those thoughts creeping back into their heads, saying, "Hey, this happened last week. What are we gonna do? Are we gonna?"
And the week
Or,
before, and the week
yeah,
before, and the week
are we gonna?
before.
Kind of like the Braves right now. I think the Braves are starting to get flashbacks from
Don't
last
get me
year.
started. Do
I
not get
knew
me started.
I needed like that one. So yeah, I'm sure big time for them to get a win on the season and maybe spring them forward into a few more as the year goes on, and they kind of close it out on a high note. But good for a team like that we've been saying is probably one of the best winless teams in the country to finally get a win and actually
Yeah, exactly.
show.
Kudos, Lions.
Yeah, I mean, show that they're actually a decent team. And I mean, they were significantly better than Robert Morris. I think that game was probably more. I wouldn't have been surprised if that had been a 3 or 4 score game at the end. But oh well, North Alabama gets the win. Kennesaw doing what they're supposed to do over North Carolina A&T. A&T is a team a lot of people were high on. I thought they'd be better than 3-3 here going into week 7, and I did not think Kennesaw would be 5-1 going into week 7. But Kennesaw continues to, not necessarily win sexy ways or anything like that, but they continue to pound it out and get wins. And that's the mark of a really good football team. And Kennesaw is somebody who, I think they'll get the auto bid out of the Big South. And I think that they could make some noise in the playoffs. They looked really good against North Carolina A&T. North Carolina A&T. That defense was suffocating. Held A&T to 200 yards for the whole game. So that was impressive in my eyes because I did not think Kennesaw had the ability to hold A&T to that little offense.
Yeah, just quickly, I think everybody in the FCS nation, like everybody that watches FCS football, we were all high on NCAA going into their conference move to the Big South. We thought they were going to be able to compete immediately. So, I mean, it's not a good win, but it's not a I don't want to say bad win because any win is not necessarily a bad win, but this isn't a win KSU should be like very high on. Yes, you beat a really good probably the best HBCU team in the nation, but you only won by 2 scores, which NCAA with their given history could have easily come back and like took the lead at any moment.
I get what you're saying, but in my eyes, man, holding somebody to 200 yards, like, could they have come back? I don't know. I mean, their offense wasn't really doing a whole lot. So, yes, I mean, if they had scored, they'd have been right back in the game, but I don't know that they had the ability. I think Kennesaw's defense was just that good this week.
Yeah,
And
but then again, this is a perspective of somebody who didn't get to watch much football this weekend as well. So
I feel you. No, I think Kennesaw has if they keep winning, we're going to see them potentially pushing for an 8 seed in the playoffs. I mean,
which would be nice, especially if JSU made the playoffs. Short trip.
They continue to win, they're going to find themselves in a good spot, maybe not having to play on Thanksgiving weekend. So kudos to Kennesaw. Last game of the weekend before we jump into some current week stuff, UCA, Eastern Kentucky. You can see I've got the Eastern Kentucky background here, and it is on the stripes, and he is flexing on the stripes, and they flexed their muscles on the stripes the entire second half after going down big in the first half. I believe it was 35-13 at one point, and UCA was rolling. And then we gave up a field goal to make it 35-16, and then fumbled the ensuing kickoff, and they took it back for a touchdown, or scored on like the next play, and it was all downhill from there. We scored one time in the second half, and they came all the way back to make it 38-35 in what was probably the biggest collapse I've seen in UCA football since I've been watching, at least. And I know that's, I've been watching since I was little, so that's several years. But I was disappointed because came out first half. I looked over at my girlfriend and I told her, she was sitting by me in the stands, and I said, I don't know that we've played a first half this well in a long time. And because we're notoriously a second half team, slow start. And I don't know if I should have said that because I completely jinxed it. We completely flipped from a second half team to a first half team and did not play well at all in the second half. They did to us what we have historically done to people. And in the second half, we couldn't get anything going after that first touchdown drive. I think we had probably total another like 100 yards of offense. We went 3 and out a lot. They and then couldn't slow them down. They started going tempo there at the end of the game, and we had no answer for it. It was disappointing. It's also a little disappointing because that's UCA's. That's probably their playoff hopes gone goodbye in one half. I mean, you're looking at a team. If we continue what was going on in the first half, you're looking at winning that game by 5-6 scores. And you look at what would have happened ranking wise this week if that had been the case. We probably would have been, sitting top 20 again. But it is what it is. I think we still probably overall, just because of the first half. Let's look at the stat line. I mean, we had 500 yards offense to their 350. Held the ball longer, had more rushing yards, more passing yards. I mean, stat wise, outplayed them. But second half, it's where it counts. It's where you make your money. It's where UCA's made their money for a few years, and we did not cash in this week. So,
yeah,
disappointing.
I was very surprised at this end result. I looked up the final score as I was heading home from the competition, and I said, EKU did what now?
Mm-hmm.
And so, because I know I picked EKU, but I expected UCA to prove me wrong and beat EKU with ease. Excuse me. And this result makes next week's game even more interesting, especially with the game that JSU has this weekend. So next week's episode should be a lot of fun.
I think Eastern Kentucky kind of moved themselves into the 2 spot as far as the AQ7 goes. I don't think.
Oh, absolutely. I put them number 2.
I don't think they're Sam Houston good, but I do see them as that second best team. And what sucks is that for a half a play, just to tell you how much parity there is in this conference this year. For half a play, we were beating what is now the number 2 team in the conference by 3. We were up 3 scores at halftime, and we were up 4 scores, midway through the third quarter. But good teams win ball games, and they won. So
did UCA just give up, or
no? I mean, it wasn't anything like that. We got outplayed, adjusted, I guess, in the second half. I mean, everything Eastern Kentucky did after the second drive in the third quarter. Their first drive, they came out. We got the ball after halftime. I think we went 3 and out. And they came back and kicked a field goal, and then we scored a touchdown. And so we were actually up bigger than we were going in at halftime. So extended the lead, and then I'm telling you, they started going tempo. They were running a play before we could get everybody lined up, and that's not normal because we run tempo quite a bit. But I don't know. It was weird. One of the most enigmatic second halves I've ever seen. I didn't know what to think. Halfway through the third quarter, I looked at Bailey and I said, we better, score quickly, or we're gonna, this isn't going to be as impressive of a win. I had already marked it off. I mean, at halftime, I know I shouldn't do that, but at halftime, I had marked it off as a win for UCA. And I looked at Bailey and I said, we better score, or we're only going to win this by, 1 or 2 scores instead of 4 or 5, like it looked like. And then, shoot, they came storming back. And when we went down, I said, holy cow. I was like, we cannot do anything correctly. And it is what it is. We lost. But kudos to the Colonels. I wish you nothing but success. I would love for Eastern Kentucky to run the table, because you look at them, they are 5-2 with what, 4 games left? Yeah, 4 games left. So they could end 9-2, and we'll talk about some playoff scenarios here in a little bit. But 9-2 Eastern Kentucky, that's, I'm not going to say you're a seeded team, because you still have, you still got Sam Houston on the schedule, and I don't think they'll beat Sam Houston. But if they finish 8-3, yeah, they're not going to get a seed or anything, but it'd be hard pressed not to. They'd make the playoffs, but we'll talk about that a little more coming up. So
absolutely.
Moving on, though, we will talk a little bit about some rankings. So you have the rankings. Do you have the rankings in front of you?
I do not. I can pull them up real quick, though.
Here we go. I've got just the rankings that you listed here. There are 5 teams from either the AQ7 or the ASUN that are ranked or receiving votes, and we will go through those real quick. Sam Houston still holding on to the number 1 spot. Kennesaw moves all the way up to 12. So they are knocking on the door of the top 10. And then Jacksonville State, EKU, and SFA all receiving votes. And in my opinion, Eastern Kentucky is definitely a top 25 team. But we will see as their schedule progresses. At 5-2, I don't know how they're not ranked, but whatever. So what do you think? I know you keep a top 25. So what do you think?
As far as our teams go, Sam Houston, until they lose, they're going to be number 1. I don't think that's how it should be, but that's how the poll voters are going to be voting. Kennesaw at 12. I think I had them lower than that. But the good news for JSU is, should JSU start looking a lot better and KSU keeps rising in the polls, that's going to make us look a lot better. Yeah, I had Kennesaw at 18. They still have a lot of proving to do for me. But as far as EKU, I have EKU ranked at 23, and JSU is just outside of my top 25. So we'll see what happens going into this week. This is a huge game for JSU. I know we'll get into it a little bit, but it'd be awesome if JSU could pull off an upset and skyrocket in the polls. So we'll see what happens.
I had, as far as top 25 rankings this week, I did have Kennesaw at 13. So kind of matched the stats poll there. And then EKU I had at 23 and SFA at 25. So I do think Eastern Kentucky is worthy of the top 25 ranking. So moving on to our AQ7 power poll, we'll flash that up on the screen. Had some significant changes this week. Really not. Eastern and UCA flip-flopped. UCA dropped down to 5 and Eastern up to 2, with Jacksonville State and SFA staying the same on their bye week, which SFA did have a bye week, didn't they? I think they did.
Yes.
I don't think they played. Yeah. So that is what our panel came up with this week, which no problem with it. I think I told you earlier, Eastern is, in my opinion, a solidified 2 here in the AQ7. And then Jacksonville State and SFA, they're neck and neck. And, I still think UCA, really good team, really talented team, but, it's hard to put a 2 and 4 team any higher than, 5 in a league with talent from, 1 through 5. Well, I mean, 6 and 7 really are. I don't think I would ever drop UCA down any lower than that, because I mean, you saw what we did number 6 ACU, but
right.
Yeah, I mean, not much to see there. I think that's pretty predictable, but we're starting to shake some things out. And then this week, obviously, we could get some more movement if some certain upsets happen.
If certain upsets happen, you might as well see a new team at number 1, and it will not be Eastern Kentucky.
Which, it could happen. I mean, I think it was Kyler that said it. If you can beat Florida State, you can beat anybody. You are capable of beating anybody in the FCS. Now, will it happen? I don't know. You lost to UT Martin and you got blown out by Kennesaw.
Depends on which team shows up.
Which, I don't know. I don't know which one that'll be, but nonetheless, talent and quality there from 1 through 5, in my opinion. So it has been fun to kind of see that start to shape up a little bit, and I think we'll start seeing some separation as we get through the last few weeks here.
As far as like this poll goes, this was literally the order of my poll.
And yeah, I did have UCA a little higher, but I mean, probably a little bit of bias there, probably a little bit of a hack.
I think you had them at 4.
Yeah, so I just know how good UCA can be, and for whatever reason, it has not been. So, oh well, it is what it is. Moving on, though, we've got some games to talk about this week. North Alabama, Charleston Southern, Jacksonville State at Sam Houston, Kennesaw at Campbell, and then UCA makes the long trip down to Beaumont to play Lamar. So we will begin with North Alabama and Charleston Southern. What do you think about the Lions going into this week?
Charleston Southern's a very bad team. They should not have any issues picking up a win right here. It'd be awesome if they could grab 2 wins in a row.
It would be awesome to see them do that.
And it's in Florence, so
yeah. Charleston Southern, they lost to Robert Morris. They did knock off Hampton. They knocked off Citadel as well. So
who knocked off VMI? So I don't know what to make of this team.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I still don't think they're great. I think North Alabama playing there at Brayley Stadium will get their second win in a row. So I'm gonna pick them until they continue to win. So go Lions and go get you a win against the Buccaneers.
Absolutely, roar Lions.
Moving on, Kennesaw State at Campbell. Give me your thoughts on this.
This is probably not going to be an issue for KSU. So as much as I love the Fighting Camels, as much as I love that mascot, I am picking the Owls big.
Oh yeah, I agree. I do not think we saw Campbell get down pretty good to North Alabama a couple weeks ago, and then North Alabama pissed that one away. But I don't think Kennesaw will have any trouble, continuing to build on a lead. I think they'll get a big lead. I mean, it may not be huge because the offense they run, but I think that that defense will come through for the Owls, and they will get another win. So not really much to talk about there. I really don't think. I think that that'll be a pretty uneventful game, and I think you'll see Kennesaw come out 6-1, moving their way toward the top 10.
First
Moving
time
on.
since when?
Ooh, would that be first time since 2015, 16?
Or was it 18?
Were they in the top 10 in 18?
I think they were because they were the number 2 team when we played them, I think.
Let's just see. I'll have to look that up in a minute.
Because I want to say it was a top 10 matchup.
Well, maybe they will crack back into the top 10 after they kind of fell out. I think some people kind of thought, you can't call it a dynasty, but the success is over. This is a new program, had some beginner's luck, but no, they are moving their way back in the top 10. So congrats to those guys. Finally, before we move on to our game of the week, we do have UCA at Lamar. Coming off an emotional loss to Eastern Kentucky.
I would not want to be Lamar right now.
No, and I'm not going to compare us to Alabama because obviously we're not as good as Alabama. We are not one loss. We have 4 losses. This team has, I don't want to say they don't have anything to play for anymore because they do. There's, a winning season is not common in college football. You want to always want to come out on the right side of the end of the season record. So, I wouldn't want to be Lamar because I think that UCA comes into this game, quite frankly, pissed off after seeing just how much better in the first half they played than Eastern, and then losing that game. I think you see UCA rolling to Lamar, a very undermatched Lamar as far as talent goes, and get a pretty big win there in Beaumont.
But I will say this, with how Lamar played Abilene Christian in the first half last week, do not be surprised if Lamar does the same thing to UCA because Abilene Christian did the same thing to UCA. And that game, UCA was on the road for that game, weren't they?
At Abilene?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't be surprised if Lamar does the same thing to UCA and UCA goes back to the old UCA of being a second half team.
I just don't think. Here's the thing about Lamar and Abilene last week. That was the second time they played each other this year. In the first matchup, Lamar lost 56-0. That second matchup is always a little tougher for whoever won because you've seen, not only do you have film of that team against you. So no, I think this is a complete game for UCA. This is one I'm not too worried about. I think they roll into Beaumont and blow the Cardinals out. But, oh well. Going on, game of the week, Jacksonville State, Sam Houston State. This is a big game for two teams that still have playoff hopes alive. Obviously, Sam Houston kind of on a fast track if they continue to win toward a top. I still think a top 4 seed. I don't think they would fall out of the top 4. I don't think they would get the 1 seed just because of strength of schedule. But I do think they would be a top 4 seed. So, and then Jacksonville State does not have the luxury of necessarily vying for a seed right now. Even if they win out and finish at 8-3, I do not see them getting an 8 seed or anything like that. So, Jacksonville State's playing for playoff hopes. Sam Houston's playing for seeding hopes. It is in Huntsville. It is bound to be a good game. So let me know what you think.
Usually, let me say that again. Keyword usually. JSU shows up against tough teams in the regular season. So, regardless if JSU wins or lose, this could be a close game, depending on which JSU team shows up. Now, personally, I do not think JSU can get the win. Sam Houston is just way too talented, way too fast, coming off of a national championship run in the spring. I just don't see this going very well for the Gamecocks. I have the Gamecocks losing 52-10.
Wow. So you don't even think it'll be close?
Absolutely not.
Wow. That is not what I expected you to say. I don't think it'll be a blowout. I do think Sam Houston will win. I think Sam Houston's just that good. They are balanced. They've got a good offense. They've got a good defense. As far as rankings, I was looking earlier this morning at the Versus app, and Sam Houston has the 8th ranked offense and the 14th rated defense in the FCS. That is very balanced, right there with the likes of Southern Illinois, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, as far as similar ratings go. So yeah, this is a big game. I don't see Jacksonville State going to Huntsville and winning it, but I don't think it'll be a blowout. I think you're looking at probably a 17 point game in the Bearcats' favor. So, Casey Keeler, he's had 2 weeks to prep for it, just like
so has JSU.
Right, that's what I was saying. Just like Jacksonville State. And they are kind of working Eric Schmid back into the mix after giving him the week off against who they give him the week off against? Whatchamacallit? SFA, sorry. And then coming back and obviously playing against Lamar in a pretty easy game there. So, yeah, I like the Bearcats in this one. I do think it'll be a good game just because there's a lot to play for. And like you said, Jacksonville State tends to kind of play to the level of their opponent, whether it be a good thing or a bad thing. In this case, I think it'll be a good thing, but I do not think that they can get it done. So
yeah, one last thing I'll say about JSU is in order to beat Sam Houston, you have got to shut your mouths and limit the number of personal or unsportsmanlike penalty calls.
yeah.
You have got, and I said this on Cocky Nation as well, shut your freaking mouths, please. It is after a good play, you let your emotions get out of hand and you cost us penalty yards.
I'll say this. I'll take it a step further. You just can't get penalized a lot in general. You're gonna have to play true defense. You're not gonna be able to tug on jerseys and hand fight while the ball's in the air. You're gonna have to play true in the secondary and not give up a bunch of penalty yards, whether it be personal fouls or little ticky-tack calls. You got to play clean, and in my opinion, Jacksonville State's got to play almost perfect to do it. Not totally, there's room for mistakes, but I think you got to play really, really good to.
What would be
beat these
real?
guys.
What would be real nice is if we come out and do exactly what we did against Stephen F. Austin, using your terms, even though I do not like your terms, untimely penalties or untimely turnovers.
Yeah, timely turnovers, not untimely.
I thought you said untimely.
Untimely if you're SFA, timely if you're Jacksonville State.
But yeah, if we were to start the game like we did against Stephen F. Austin, that would help us a lot.
Yeah, a couple key turnovers there at the beginning of that game kind of shifted it for the better for the Gamecocks. So, yeah, you do that and anything's possible. So, playing with a lead down in Huntsville, I don't think the atmosphere will be too great. It never really is down there. But I think two teams still looking for the AQ7 auto bid. So that's another thing we'll talk about here in just a second, talking about some playoffs. And that's what we're going to move into now. Let's talk a little bit about the playoff picture for the AQ7. And really, I will go ahead and go out on a limb here and say only 3 teams still left looking for a playoff bid. I do not think SFA at 8-3. Maybe they get in, maybe not.
There's no way the AQ7 is getting 4 teams in.
No. I'm saying still alive, still have playoff hopes in general. No. I'm not saying get 4 teams in. I'm just saying there's still 4 teams that have playoff hopes. Obviously, if one team's playoff hopes come to fruition, another team's probably won't because they'll play each other. But
right,
I do think Sam Houston's on the fast track for a seed, probably a top 4. And then Eastern Kentucky, if they continue to do what they're doing, man, they are on track to. I know home games are not decided by results. I know they're bidded, but in the world where they would be decided by results, they would be on a fast track for some home field in the first round or two. But no, Eastern looks good. I think that they still have opportunity to make playoffs, or a really good one. They're sitting at 5-2 with Lamar, SFA, Sam Houston, and Jacksonville State left on the schedule. I do think they're better than SFA. They are better than Lamar, so let's just go ahead and give them 7-2 with Sam Houston and Jacksonville State left on the schedule. I think the Jacksonville State game is probably a toss-up. And then I'll go ahead and say they probably lose to Sam Houston, although anything's possible. I mean, I think EKU set themselves up nicely here going into the last month of the season to get a playoff bid.
Absolutely. Let's talk about one other team before I give you a scenario that I gave Dustin Helton. There's still a way that absolute chaos can ensue, and it involves 3 teams.
Okay. Let me hear.
Well, so JSU, they have Sam Houston this week, Abilene, then Lamar, and then they travel to EKU. So let's just go ahead and say that everything happens the way they should, that it should. That last game for JSU and EKU basically determines who gets that possible at-large bid for the AQ7.
Mm-hmm.
But that would put us going into the EKU game at a 7-3. Yeah, 7-3. No, most likely 6-4. Yeah, 6-4. So that game is going to determine if JSU gets eliminated and EKU gets the at-large, or if there's going to be 2 teams that are going to be considered for that at-large bid. With the resume JSU would have, I would give the nod to JSU because they have that FBS win over FSU. EKU doesn't have a key win on their schedule other than maybe UCA, but we know how that's going to shape up for the rest of the season. Now, my scenario, what if Sam Houston beats JSU, EKU beats Sam Houston, and JSU beats EKU? But all the other games that they have on their schedule, they win the rest of those. So that would put Sam Houston at 9-1 with a 5-1 record with a win over JSU. That's their key win. Mm-hmm. EKU at 8-3, 5-1 record, conference record. Key win is Sam Houston. JSU would be at 7-4, 5-1 record with key wins over FSU and EKU. What would happen as far as like playoffs go for the AQ and for at-larges?
I think in that case, there is a chance that the AQ7 only gets the automatic qualifier in, which I don't know what they've talked about tiebreaker-wise. But if they went to, I don't know if they would do it like, how you did against the next best team in the conference standings-wise. I don't know. But I could see that creating a 1-bid scenario for the AQ7. And if it did create a 2-bid scenario, I still think Eastern Kentucky gets the nod because they did not get blown out by Kennesaw State. And I mean, it all comes down to how did you look in these losses and how did you look in these wins too. I know Jacksonville State's got the FBS win on the record for them, but I don't know. It's other than it lost to Indiana State right now, Eastern Kentucky's undefeated against FCS competition, which I guess they'd have 2 losses. Jacksonville State would have 3 FCS losses. So, and with just the general better record, I don't think you can say like, oh, our strength of schedule is completely, over. It's not like strength of schedule for like, I don't know, somebody that's got a really tough one, like a Eastern Washington strength of schedule over like a Presbyterian strength of schedule. Like it's not that different. I know you've got a key FBS win, like I said, but I still think Eastern Kentucky, if two bids came from the AQ7, I think it would be Eastern and Sam Houston, unless somehow Jacksonville State got the auto bid. And then if Jacksonville State only got the auto bid, I think Sam Houston obviously still gets in. It's a two-bid league. And, the AQ7 could then somehow give somebody else the auto bid. That way they did get two teams in, kind of pull a Big Ten and just, bend the rules so we get two teams in. But I mean, that's definitely a chaotic situation. And I think, now that I think about it, the AQ7 leadership, the ASUN and the WAC leadership together could really come together and figure out a way. Hey, if we give the auto bid to Jacksonville State or to Eastern Kentucky, they're not going to leave Sam Houston out of the playoffs. I mean, now you're setting yourself up for two teams to get in just by default. But it's definitely.
I'm going to slightly disagree with you.
Okay.
I think the FBS win for JSU really sets them up nicely to get to be one of those last four teams or last two teams in, because they have that FBS win at 7-4. I'm going to agree with Kyler when it comes to that, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he said a couple weeks ago a 7-4 JSU team still gets into the playoffs with an FBS win.
He said there was a chance, I think. I think he said that, like, I don't think he said, like, emphatically it would happen, but he said there was probably or something like that.
So we'll also just, after that happens, after JSU beats EKU, Sam Houston and EKU are going to be ranked at the time. JSU will probably still hover in the receiving votes and blah, 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 blah. After JSU beats EKU, I think JSU will be ranked, and that'll be just another thing that the committee, I know it's one of the last things that the committee looks at as far as like who gets in and why you get in. But I think if JSU beats EKU in this scenario, they will end up ranked, because EKU will be ranked, I wouldn't say pretty high, but I'd say top 15 or around top 15. If they beat EKU in this scenario, beating a top 15 EKU looks really good for their resume.
No doubt. And I mean, I don't know, 7-4 just seems like a stretch. If for some reason the AQ went to Sam Houston in that scenario, whatever the tiebreaker rules may be, I
don't think we have any.
I'm sure the leadership at some point has come up with something, and we just don't know it because it hadn't really been an issue yet. But I just think that if somehow Sam Houston got the AQ bid out of that scenario, I think we're looking at possibly a one bid league with some, with an angry two teams in Jacksonville State and Eastern Kentucky, because
I wouldn't say JSU would be angry, because the fact that we don't make the playoffs is even more reason to not extend John Gross's contract.
That's fair. But either way, I think that, you probably got some ticked off fans, players, coaches.
Definitely EKU fan base and team.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, everybody wants to make the playoffs. It's the mark of a successful season. But
and just judging based on how well EKU has done this year and like the trajectory they are on, if they don't make the playoffs, they're going to come into this first year of ASUN play pissed off.
Yeah, they now there's always the chance that they could drop, 3 more games. They could beat Lamar, and that could be the only win left on the schedule for them. And they could finish 6-5. I don't think it'll happen, but it could. I mean, they've still got a talented SFA, obviously the number 1 team in the country, and then Jacksonville State. So,
but if if EKU wins three of their last four and finishes 8-3, and they still don't make the playoffs, I'm telling you, my pick for the ASUN next year will not be Kennesaw, JSU, or Central Arkansas. If that happens, my pick will be EKU going into next year.
Here's what's kind of interesting. I think Eastern Kentucky will knock off SFA, but as far as strength of schedule remaining, SFA's pretty much got the easiest. They've got UCA and Eastern left, and that's about it. They've got Lamar, Abilene, and Dixie State. They could rip off 5 in a row and be 8-3 and make the playoffs. So don't ignore SFA because I think they may have the best outside chance. I think, honestly, Eastern and SFA are the two most likely to win out, given the fact that Eastern will probably lose to Sam Houston.
But let's say EKU loses to, let's say they beat Sam Houston and lose to SFA and JSU. That's just a whole nother scenario of absolute chaos that's probably going to take at least 30 minutes to just dissect alone.
Well, and if that happens, if there's a lot of chaos like that in this conference, I don't see us getting 2 bids. I see us getting the one AQ and then, move on and give an extra Valley team that last at-large spot. That's unfortunately how I see it would play out because I think historically when there's been a lot of, chaos in other conferences, it sometimes works out well for some of the Power 3, if you may, or the Big 3, whatever you want to call it.
There's been a lot of I think there's been way more chaos this year in the Power 3 than there has been in any other year.
Well, there is, but chaos for those conferences a lot of times means extra bids. Chaos for like conferences like the SoCon, the Southland, the Ohio Valley, in history have usually led to one bid years. So I could see the AQ7 ending up with, possibly just Sam Houston making it if there's a lot of chaos. They're 2 through 5 as far as who would be vying for that at-large spot. And so, honestly, I'm confident to say that, if I were making a bet, I'd say that we're a one-bid league. But if certain things do work out, I do think the most likely to get that second bid right now is Eastern Kentucky. And then just in order of who I think is most likely to get it, I would say obviously Sam Houston being the one, and then Eastern Kentucky would be my most likely to get that second spot. But then because of strength of schedule, SFA they're coming in with a long shot to get it. And then Jacksonville State obviously has a chance to get it, but I don't see them. I just don't know at 7-4 if they do it or not. There's a chance, but I don't think they necessarily would. But if chaos ensues, mark my words, one bid league.
Which, do not be surprised come Selection Sunday that when they reveal the first 4 out, if 2 of them are AQ7 teams.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, if they come out with the first 4 out, I think you could definitely see Eastern Kentucky and Jacksonville State both getting left out, and then one bid being Sam Houston. So kind of sucks, but chaos on our end usually just means that we're going to give an extra bid to the Missouri Valley or to the Big Sky.
But hey, got to go through this chaos to be a one bid league in order to get multiple bids in
at a
later
doubt.
date.
I mean, looking down the line, schedule some out of conference games, win some out of conference games against Big 3 opponents, and you're looking
and then
at
just total chaos in the conference.
So a lot can happen, no doubt. But well, we appreciate everybody listening in this week to hear us kind of go at it about some AQ7 football. Make sure you're following us on Twitter. That's where we're the most active at around the ASUN. And then make sure you're following all the FCS Fans Nation accounts, whether it be YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. especially go ahead and join the YouTube and Facebook community, because there's a lot of great content on the FCS Fans Nation podcast network on YouTube. A lot of good shows coming out there. And then obviously on Facebook, like I say every week, big time community where you can plug in with fans from around the country. So we appreciate you listening in. It is a big week for the AQ7, and we will have more content for you next week.